organizers of VegFest for what a fantastic turnout that they have done. It's really people who really do need answers to problems that a lot of us have dealt with. And in our research team, we've tried to put various diets to the test so that we have the scientific evidence that we need, so to be confident that we're making. But then you need to go further. There are times where we need to lobby on Capitol Hill to change food policies, and frankly, there are a few times you just have to sue the bastards. The truth is, I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and my grandpa was a cattle rancher, and so was his father, and so was my father, come think of it. My dad grew up in a cattle ranch, and he didn't like the cattle business, so he left it. And he went to medical school, but he spent his life treating diabetes in Fargo, North Dakota, and we ate very much like we were still in the cattle business, which means every day of my life it was roast beef, baked potatoes, and corn, except for special occasions when it was roast beef, baked potatoes, and peas. The year before I went to medical school, I had a job in Minneapolis, and I was the morgue attendant, which meant that if anybody died in the hospital, we would examine the body, and I would help the pathologists prepare for the exam and clean up afterwards. And one day we had a guy who died in the hospital of a massive heart attack, probably from eating hospital food, but that's anyway, so we take the body out of the cooler, and the pathologist knew that I was going to go to medical school, so he wanted to make sure that I could see everything that was going on, and he took what looked like a garden clipper and just went crunch, crunch, crunch through the ribs on this side, and the same thing on this side, and he pulled the ribs off the chest and set it on the table. And that exposes the heart. And he said, look here, the coronary arteries get their name because they crown the heart. And he sliced one open with a scalpel, and he said, look inside. And I looked in there. Instead of it being a wide open artery that could bring blood and oxygen to the heart muscle, it was clogged with what looked kind of like chewing gum. And he said, feel it. So I did. And it was hard, like a rock. And he said, that's atherosclerosis. And we looked in the arteries to the kidneys, the arteries to the legs, the carotid arteries going to the brain. They all had this same process. And he said, if this person hadn't died of a heart attack, he would have had a stroke. And he said, we see these plaques build up in about 80% of people by about age 23, which was the age I was at the time. That's a good. Anyway, I'm getting this like really graphic lesson. So at the end, I cleaned up and we took the ribs off the chest and tried to make them fit with the other ribs and sewed up the skin. And then I went up to the cafeteria. And when I got there, I was going through the line, and it turned out they were serving ribs for lunch. I have to tell you, between the look of it and the smell of it, I didn't become a vegetarian on the spot, but something just hit me, and I within about a year, that was it. So anyhow, what I want to do is maybe start with taking a look around the world a little bit and seeing what lessons we can draw, and then try to put it to work in some tests of our own, okay? So let's start with Japan. If you look at what they're eating in Japan, it is not roast beef, baked potatoes, and corn. The dietary staples of Japan, at least, it's especially a rice-based diet. Lots of vegetables and bean products and so forth. And if you look at diabetes in Japan, in adults over the age of 40, before 1980, it's pretty rare. About 1 to 5% of the population. But what happened in Japan right around that time? Yeah. William Castelli at the Framingham Heart Study always said, when you see the golden arches, you're on the road to the pearly gates. It's true. These are not traditional Japanese foods, but they've become very popular. And if you look at the fat content of the Japanese diet, can you see this? It's not as bad as where we are, but it's going up. And they're eating less rice, less noodles. In other words, carbohydrate is falling. Fat is rising, carbs are falling. And the waistline, the top line here is the prevalence of overweight. That's going up. The bottom line there is obesity. There's not a lot of obesity yet, but you get the picture. So if you got a population eating more fat, getting heavier, what's going to happen to diabetes? Well, prior to 1980, 1 to 5%. By 1990, 11 to 12%. This shows us two things. Number one, rice doesn't cause diabetes. That's important. Because everybody who's diagnosed with diabetes, or everybody who's got it in their family says, don't eat carbs. Don't eat bread, don't eat pasta, don't eat rice. Don't eat sweet potatoes, don't eat fruit. They're afraid of carbohydrate. What they don't realize is that a symptom of diabetes is that your body's having trouble handling carbohydrate. That's not the cause, it never was. The cause is a buildup of fat inside cells. The other thing that this shows us is that diabetes is not mainly genetic. There are genes for it, but we have all kinds of genes. The genes for your eye color or your hair color, those genes are dictators. If they say blue eyes, brown hair, you can't argue. But the genes for diabetes are not dictators. They're more like committees. They make suggestions. You could get diabetes. But what you can say is, no, I don't think so. Because it depends on what you're eating and on other aspects of lifestyle. Those genes are like seeds on the floor of the desert. They're just sitting there. And if it never rains, nothing ever comes up. So we have a lot of wiggle room with genetic risk. So let's take a lesson from the United States. In 2010, I published a paper in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition where I looked at the Department of Agriculture's data on how our diets have changed over the last century. And back in 1909, your average American, we were meat eaters back then, but although it was nothing like, say, Japan or something, we had a meaty diet. But your average person ate, in a year's time, 123.9 pounds of meat in 1909. But what's happened since then? Well, it's kind of gone up, hasn't it? And as of about 2007, we were over 200 pounds. This is meat per year per person. So where are we putting an extra 75 pounds of meat? Every person this year, same person next year, next year, next year. What I'm saying is in a year's time, we're eating 75 pounds more of it every single year. One person. Well, by the way, it's not red meat that's going up. Anybody know what's going up?
Chicken.
It's chicken. Americans now eat more than 1 million chickens per hour. About 10 million per year. Oh, it's health food, isn't it? It's lower in fat. We're in the worst shape we have ever been in. Chicken is a whole lot more like a cow than it is like cauliflower. And let me say a special word. Let me say a special word of condemnation for cheese. Back in 1909, we were in big cheese disgrace. We just didn't eat cheese at all. It was 3.8 pounds in a year. That was the average cheese intake. But what happened? Around 1960, fast food chains came in. And every sandwich would go a little bit better with a slice of cheese under the bun, wouldn't it? And then pizza restaurants became very popular. So right around 1970, pizza became a big fad. They could connect their restaurant to your house with a phone wire. And you can have dinner in half an hour. And you know what else? Kids will eat it. And we could put it in schools. And the dairy farmers thought that was great, so they lobbied to make sure that whenever dairy production fell, the government would buy up more cheese. It goes into schools, hospitals, prisons. Cheese intake has gone through the roof. As of 2005, we're at 31 pounds. As of 2011, we're at about 34 pounds per person per year. I'm not eating any. Somebody else has got in mind. So where are we putting 30 pounds extra cheese? Every single person this year, again next year, again next year? Okay, well, one more thing. Sugar. The blue line here is cane sugar and beet sugar, and that's falling. We're eating less sugar. But we are more than making up for it with corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, that's right. That's the green line. So you add this line and that line together, you get the red line, which is the total sweeteners. And that's gone up quite substantially, 30, 40, 50 pounds. So why? Well, if you have a population that's eating 75 pounds more meat this year, next year, 30 pounds more cheese, 40 or 50 pounds more sugar, why do we have an obesity epidemic? Let's see. The reason this concerns me is that we suddenly ignore all of this when we're talking about kids. What we say to kids is, you need to exercise more. The government has a program called Let's Move, as if jiggling your butt is somehow really more effective than changing what you're eating. And don't get me wrong, exercise is good, and kids do need to unplug the video game sometimes and get physically active. That's true. But for a child to exercise off the calories in 6 chicken nuggets, the child would have to run for 3.5 miles. And if there was a soda with it, another 2.5 miles. And if there's an order of fries, 2 miles more. So in theory, kids can exercise off all those calories. But they wouldn't have time to do anything else. And the reason we have an obesity epidemic in adults and in kids is because our diet has changed. You don't notice the changes from year to year, but when you step back, we are eating nothing like our grandparents did, and they were not eating very well. So that's what we've got to really take. All right, so let's take a look at diabetes. This is, there's Fargo, where I grew up. Less than 4% of the population had diabetes at that time. And there's Louisiana, Mississippi, more than 6%. But as our diets have changed, meatier, cheesier, more sugar, then in 95 and 96 and 97, you see the changes. 99, 2000, 2001, 2, 3. Diabetes is just roaring in. In 2006, we needed new colors for some political reason. I don't know what that's about. But anyway, the map is continuing to change. You get the picture. Diabetes, we're in completely uncharted territory with this condition now. So researchers have said, well, who's doing better? And one group that they have been particularly fond of studying are Seventh-day Adventists. And I don't know if you know much about the Adventist religion. I was not very familiar until I got involved in research, but it's a research gold mine. Adventists, by the church teachings, avoid tobacco, they avoid alcohol, avoid caffeine, and are supposed to avoid meat. But not everybody quite follows that fourth guideline. So it sets up a natural experiment of health-conscious non-smokers following different diets. And it lets you compare. So the American Diabetes Association in 2009 published this figure. They said, let's look at what happens with different diets, habits. And the red line on the left side here, these are non-vegetarians, just people following a normal diet, a normal American diet. And what they're tracking is body mass index. Are you familiar with BMI? It's basically your weight, but it's adjusted for height. And a healthy BMI is below 25, okay? So the non-vegetarians were at 28.8, that's too high. In other words, your average meat eater is a little overweight. But then semi-vegetarians who ate meat less than once a week, they were a little thinner. And then pesco-vegetarians, what's that? Okay, so they don't eat any meat other than fish. They're a little slimmer. And then the lacto-ovo-vegetarians, lacto means milk, and ovo means eggs. Okay, so they don't have any meat, but they're having eggs and milk. They're skinnier. And who are these people out here? A vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. A vegan diet basically means no animal products of any kind. And they're actually the only group smack in the middle of the healthy weight range. Now, the reason the American Diabetes Association published this finding was because of this. Diabetes. Diabetes is exactly the same gradient, only much more severe. So the meat eaters have a lot of it, the vegans have almost none of it, and the other groups just slide in. So the way to think about this is think backwards. Let's say I'm eating vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans, and I don't have very much diabetes risk, and I'm going to be a healthy weight probably. But I decide, I think I'll add a little milk, and maybe an egg or two. Then your diabetes risk goes up a little bit, your weight is likely to go up. How about some fish? Well, oops, we're going to gain a little more weight, our diabetes risk takes a jump. How about a little bit of beef every now and then? Oops, we're taking another step up. How about having meat every day? Then we're in the worst of all possible worlds. You get the idea? Okay, so you don't have to be Adventist. You could be European. And the EPIC study, the European Perspective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition, the EPIC study, this is men, this is women, and it's exactly the same. That the meat eaters are the heaviest, the vegans are the skinniest, and the other groups just slide in between. So pretty good. All right, so my research team said, okay, we get it. How about if we test out this diet in people who never thought about doing this on their own? had never done any kind of diet like that. So we brought in 64 women. They were all moderately to severely overweight. They were all after the age of menopause. They had done every diet you can imagine. They had done Atkins and South Beach and Nutrisystem and Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers. And they all had the results of losing a little bit of weight, but then it would come back. And so what we did was we said, how about this? Eat fruits, grains, legumes, and vegetables. Legumes meaning the beans, peas, lentils, foods that grow in a pod. So these are the ingredients. And so we said there's two rules. Everything's going to be vegan, and everything's going to be low in fat. And the reason that's important is if you take your bottle of olive oil and you go glug, all over your salad, all over your pasta, the oil is building up. And this is going to be on the test. Every gram of fat or oil has 9 calories. But a gram is not much. If you take a thimble, that's more than a gram. So a gram of fat has 9 calories. But a gram of carbohydrate, wherever it's from, has how many? 4. That's right. It doesn't matter. It could be pure sugar, it could be bread, it could be potatoes, only 4. So that's why they're skinny in Japan, because they're eating all the rice all the time. They're not eating the meaty, fatty stuff. Very simple. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's make sure. How many calories are there in a gram of beef fat? 9. That's right. Good. How about if it's chicken fat? 9. Good. How about fish oil? 9. That's right. How about if it's peanut oil? 9. Still 9. See, it's plant derived. It's not as bad as chicken fat, but it's still got 9 calories per gram. How about olive oil? 9. Extra virgin olive oil? How about extra virgin olive oil? And I paid $85 for this bottle straight from Italy. Yes, 9. How about 1040 motor oil? Don't try this at home, but if you cook with it, it actually does have 9 calories. It really does. I'm not making this up. Okay, so anyway, so there are only 2 rules. It's everything's vegan, everything's low in oil, because this is a weight loss study. With me? Okay, so typical day's meals might be blueberry pancakes, oatmeal with cinnamon and raisins, half cantaloupe, but there were no portion sizes. So if they wanted 6 pancakes and 3 cantaloupes, that wasn't against the rules. They could have chili, but it would be a bean chili or a chunky vegetable chili. And if we went Italian, it might be linguine with artichoke hearts and seared oyster mushrooms. Very simple. And I have to tell you, when we do research studies, there are occasional moments of humiliation for researchers. The way we introduce our diets is we don't just hand you a paper and say, come back in 6 months. What we do is we get together as a group every week. And it's a really good model for anybody who wants to make a change. You just get together every week and you talk. They also got on the scale on the way in. So they knew that there was accountability, which they appreciated. And we would go over our challenges and our successes. And in about the 3rd week of the study, one of the participants said to me, Dr. Barnard, I found a treat that I can have on your low-fat vegan diet. I'm thinking, uh-oh. She opens her purse and pulls out a bag of Twizzlers. And you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's red licorice they sell at the 7-Eleven. Just read the label. And I read the label, and it's true. There's no animal products. There's no added oils. And it's just sugary, starchy, artificially colored junk. And she made sure that everybody in my research study knew you can have all the Twizzlers you want on this diet. So anyway, my vegan, low-fat, Twizzler-fueled research participants set off on their paths to the unknown. Fortunately, when we put them on the scale at the end of 14 weeks, your average person had lost 13 pounds in 14 weeks. So not a lot, but we'll take it. And when we tracked them a year later, the weight never had come back. In fact, they were skinnier after 1 year, and they were skinnier at 2 years than after 1 year. And those of you who have done vegan diets and lost weight, you know that you're not starving. So there's no tendency to binge, that old kind of I want to eat the sofa feeling that you have from a low-calorie diet. That's not there when you're just eating a lot of healthy foods. So there's no reason for the weight to ever come back. They were skinnier at 2 years than before. So let me put a human face on this. This is Nancy. Nancy had a weight problem. She also had diabetes. And she lost 40 pounds over about a year. She stopped her diabetes medication. She was in better control on nothing than she had been on pills. And she wanted to tell me, one day she came running into our center, said, "You won't believe this. I was cooking spaghetti last night, and I cracked open a jar of spaghetti sauce and poured it in the saucepan, and I just stopped cold and realized I haven't been able to open it." She had rheumatoid arthritis. And if you have rheumatoid arthritis, it starts in the base of your thumbs, and it spreads to the other joints, and you soon realize, who's ever making these vacuum-packed jars, they are sadists. You can't get them open. But she realized it had opened easily, and her joints were just back to normal. And she said, this is a study to help me lose weight, get my diabetes better. Why is my arthritis gone? And I had to tell her that I wrote a book in 1998 called Foods That Fight Pain, because I was awestruck by the fact that arthritis, migraines, menstrual cramps, lower back pain, all have links to food that you would never in a million years guess. With lower back pain, it's a question of circulation. With menstrual cramps, it's a question of hormonal changes that are dramatically influenced by food. And with joint pain, it's the fact that certain proteins that you are exposed to cause your body to make antibodies that inflame the joints. And so ignoring that, we're going to put you on ibuprofen, then I'm going to put you on prednisone, then I'm going to put you on methotrexate, then we're going to talk about side effects. And then you're going to eventually lose more and more mobility. That's the medical system. But on the other hand, if we identify the cause and take it out, the most common cause is dairy protein. It's not for everybody, but for most people. And there are others too. It could be egg, it could be white potatoes, it could be meat, it could be maybe citrus fruits for different people. And there's a simple way to figure out which is yours. Don't take this on faith. What we do is we just remove those things, and then you challenge yourself again, then you remove them, and then you challenge it. Sooner or later, you're going to say, I get it already. One way I have no pain, the other, I've got this grindy feeling in my joints. And not everybody gets better, but I would say 50 or 70% of people do. So anyway, that happened in her case. And if you want to help a person to really love your diet, stick with it and decide, this is it for me, make the pain go away. Let me show you. This is Vance. Vance joined another one of our studies. Vance's father was dead by age 30. Vance was 31 when he was diagnosed with diabetes. He was in his late 30s when he came in to see us. And so we put him on a low-fat vegan diet. He lost 60 pounds over about a year. He stopped his diabetes medications. His doctor said, if you came into my clinic today, nobody would diagnose you as ever having had diabetes. And I got to tell you, when I was a kid growing up, and my father would come home from the clinic, I never once heard him say that anyone was cured of diabetes, that diabetes had never gone away, that it would ever become undetectable. But now we see it all the time. Wow. We see it all the time, simply because we're addressing the specific cause of it, which again has to do with the buildup of little fat droplets inside skeletal muscle and liver cells in particular. So anyway, as I was asking Vance's permission to tell you his story, he said one other thing. Make sure you tell everybody that my erectile dysfunction went away too. So write that down. So how does it work? How can you be eating carbohydrate and not limiting portion sizes and still lose weight? Well, I want to just walk you through this real quick. The first is a complete no-brainer. If you're eating vegetables and fruits and so forth, they have fiber, plant roughage. Fiber has essentially no calories. But it makes you feel full. It holds water in your stomach, so you're going to think you've eaten a lot, when in truth you haven't eaten so much. So all of these foods have roughage in them. And if everything you're eating is from a plant, then your brain says, thank you, man, that was a really filling meal. Let's stop. And when I add it up, you've eaten probably 200 calories less than before. Really simple. Now on the other hand, Velveeta is not from a plant. It has 0 fiber, and every last calorie in it gives you its full advantage. And the same is true with meat, same is true with eggs. They're not from plants. So they don't have any fiber, and so you get every last calorie. This is not rocket science, it's just real simple. So the other thing is your after-meal calorie burn. Buckle your seatbelt, I want to walk you through this a little bit. When you get up in the morning, your metabolism is at the slowest point it's going to be in the day. And I can measure it. You come into the laboratory, you lie down on the table, and I put a little a canopy over you can see through it. This little see-through canopy that goes over your head and shoulders. And I'm measuring your oxygen intake and your carbon dioxide output. And with some simple calculations, I can tell you what your metabolism is, how fast you're burning calories minute by minute. And when you get up in the morning, it's real slow. So I will feed you breakfast. And as soon as you eat breakfast, you're absorbing the nutrients, they're going into your cells. The cells are burning calories faster. You're storing some, you're giving others off as body heat, but your metabolism goes up for about 3 hours. However, when we put the women I was describing on a vegan diet, and then brought them back into the laboratory later, we gave them exactly the same test meal, but what we discovered was that their metabolism had been readjusted by the diet. It was about 16% faster. Now that's not a lot, but you get a 16% faster after meal burn, after breakfast, again for 3 hours after lunch, again 3 hours after dinner. So why do people who follow a low-fat diet lose weight? Well, first of all, fiber tricks the brain into shutting down the appetite so you're satisfied. And the rest of you just ramps up the metabolism just a little bit so that even though you're taking in a little bit less calories, you're also burning them off just that much faster. So the weight loss is, for all intents and purposes, automatic. Okay, very simple. So just to go one more step, this is a muscle cell. I'm going to stick a needle in my leg and pull out one cell, and it's sort of this spindle shape. And the reason I'm showing you a muscle is that your muscles are, you guys know this, muscles are your calorie burners, right? That's what burns up the energy. Well, you've got something inside there, that little dot. And there's another one. Those are mitochondria. Do you remember mitochondria from your high school biology? What they are is they're little organelles that burn up calories. And you've got a lot of them, hopefully, and the more of them you got, the more calories you're going to burn. However, there's something else in there. It's fat. See that fat? Now, doctors don't like words like fat. It's only got one syllable. So we refer to it as intramyocellular lipid. Intra means inside. Myo means muscle. Cellular means cellular. Lipid means fat. So intramyocellular lipid is fat inside the muscle cell. How's it getting there? It's getting there because I ate bacon and eggs for breakfast, which had a lot of fat, and the fat goes into my bloodstream and into the cells with surprisingly little biochemical change. And at lunch I had salmon because I heard it has good fat. Well, 70% of the fat in salmon is not good fat, and even all of it ends up getting into the cell, and that's a problem. So as the fat builds up in the cell, your cells look at you and go, hooray! This is fantastic. If we happen to have a famine in the next week or two, I'm set because I can survive it because you gave me all this fat. And you say to your body, wait a minute, that's not what we're doing here. I promise you there's no famine. There haven't been famines in a long time. But your body was designed back when there were famines. And so when you eat a lot of fat, your body goes into conservation mode and it turns down the production of mitochondria. Let me say that again. Fatty meals within 3 days turn down your body's manufacturing of mitochondria. So you're burning calories slower. Did you feel that? When I was 12, I used to be able to eat anything, but now something's happened. I'm just not burning calories so fast. These guys are sort of underemployed. So here's the point. Fat in cells slows down your after-meal calorie burn. You with me? Real simple, okay? So what's the answer? A vegan diet has how much animal fat? Doesn't have any. And if I keep the oils really low, look what happens in the cells. That fat starts to dribble away. That happens really quickly. That's the reason diabetes gets better, because the cell is less insulin resistant. That's the reason my metabolism starts to improve. Very simple. So you get the fat out of your cells, you boost your after-meal calorie burn. So now I'd like to talk to you about your car insurance. This is Geico. When I look out my office window, that's what I see. Geico's national headquarters is right near the PCRM offices. And there are 2,500 people working in that building. And every time any one of them starts a cholesterol-lowering drug, or a diabetes drug, or a blood pressure drug, or goes to see the doctor, you know who pays for it? Geico pays for it. And they said, well, wait a minute, that's not so good. How about, what if we had a workforce entirely of vegans? That would be a good thing. They'd be cheap employees. So we worked with Geico to institute a vegan program at Geico. This was the first one was 2007. We said, anybody, and no pressure, but anybody who wants to do it, we're going to support you with two things. The first is vegan food in the cafeteria. So yes, they've got bacon and eggs for breakfast, but they have an oatmeal bar. And yes, they have the greasy cheeseburger, but they also have a veggie burger, portobello sandwich, salad bar. And the second thing is, in addition to vegan foods in the cafeteria, we're going to have a once-a-week cooking class, really, or it's kind of a support group, where everybody would get together, they'd bring their lunch, and we would just talk for an hour at lunchtime. And that kept everybody on track. Works really well. Now, I do have to, so we did it as a research study. In Fredericksburg, Virginia, there was another Geico facility, and in both, we said everybody's going to get weighed, we're going to check your cholesterol and your waist circumference and so forth. But in Fredericksburg, you don't get the program, and in this one in Washington, D.C., you do. Now, I have to tell you, there were a couple of missteps along the way. I mean, what can you say? It was new for that. Anyway, listen, the biggest weight loss we had was about 46 pounds between July and December. And then some people dropped out of the study and they didn't lose anything, but average was about 11. And they got skinnier. And by the way, this led to a new study, which we just finished, with 10 Geico sites around the United States. And we've had hundreds of people doing it, and we haven't published the findings, so I cannot tell you them yet. But from this, we published 3 scientific papers on the acceptability, the nutrient changes, the weight loss, the changes in diabetes, and nothing's going to surprise you. I mean, these people are following a healthy diet, and they do well. But I want to show you my worst participants. This is Hillary and Bruce. They sat in the back of every one of our discussion groups, and they just talked to each other. They were chattering and talking and paying no, I would bring in the best cooking instructors that we had, and they paid no attention at all, and it was a little distracting. But you know what? You can misjudge people. And I have to say, I misjudged them. Because they were talking a lot, but what they were talking about was, here's what we're going to pick up at the store on the way home, and here's how we're going to get through Thanksgiving following a vegan diet. Here's how we're going to convince her parents to do it along with it. In other words, they were very much into it. And a year later, they sent me this picture. They sent me this picture for 2 reasons. The first is, he's lost 100 pounds, she's lost 85 pounds. And he said, you know, when I was heavy, Bruce, in his words, he said, I couldn't exercise. It hurts to exercise when you're heavy. And you don't want to go running down the road and have people see you jiggling everywhere. And which is what he said. And I can understand how he's feeling. You go to the gym and other people are looking at you, and it's not a good situation. But he described to me that when the weight comes off, something changes. You discover that your energy is back, and you feel better, and you want to exercise again. And see those little squares on their stomachs? They entered their first half marathon. And the reason this is so important, any of you who have ever been on diets, half of what's going on is biology, the other half is psychological. And it's not good. Here's what happens. You go on the diet, and you're really pumped up about it for a couple days, and then suddenly you discover it's hard to follow. And you might slip from the diet a little bit, or even if you give it your best, you start to lose ground. And what happens is not just on the scale, what happens is something going on up here. You say to yourself, why can't I do this? Other people seem to do this. You know, there must be something wrong with me. My willpower is just no good. And then you do another diet, and you have the same experience, and this confirms for you, there's something wrong with me. I just don't have any kind of willpower. I think I'm just not going to conquer this. I can't. You do another diet, and you're absolutely sure. And it spills over into every other aspect of your life, that I'm just drawn to things, I feel ashamed. And I want to tell you something. If any of you have ever memorized those lines, I want you to erase them. There's not one thing wrong with you. There is not one thing wrong with you. What there is there's something wrong with diets that are misdesigned. by well-meaning people who didn't understand how the body works, what controls our appetite, what controls our metabolism, and some way that you can put it to work. And we've beaten ourselves up for no reason. And when we put back into our lives the foods that restore our health and get us working the way we should, physically we improve, but psychologically we can start shedding those ideas and set them aside and throw them away. Okay? And we discover, I can do things. I can exercise more. I can achieve other things in my life. And you just set aside all that negative stuff. Okay? So this is a healthy diet, the power plate. Fruits, grains, legumes, vegetables. And we PCRM, sent this to the Department of Agriculture in 2009. And did you see what they came out with earlier this year? Similar. I tell you the truth. We were half glad to see this because it is kind of similar to what we were suggesting. But we also decided it was not perfect. Because even though there is for the first time in history, there's no meat group anymore. They have a protein group. Now the protein group includes meat and beans. So we're kind of prying them away from the idea you need a livestock group. And the dairy group includes soy milk. If soy milk counts, it's okay. And cheese doesn't, which is good. So that's all a step in the right direction. But I have to tell you, we don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of diabetes and a lot of weight problems and so forth. And we cannot be telling Americans sort of half-truths, that meat is the same as beans, or that milk from a cow is somehow healthy or necessary. So we do have an active lawsuit against the USDA to say, we'll see how we do. So now, by now, you're probably tired of the question, where do you get your protein? But just to deal with this, a diet of healthy plant foods has all the protein you're going to need. Beans, grains, vegetables have lots of protein, even if you don't consume them in any particular combination. The old idea of protein complementing, I'm talking about beans with grains. In theory, sure, but everybody eats foods in just various combinations, and over time you get all the amino acids you need, so you don't have to complement them. Or you can say something nice about them. You don't have to do anything beyond that. So protein is a complete non-issue. Calcium is an issue, but it's really simple. And hopefully some of you were in Amy's talk just now, Amy in the news talk. She's done really better work on this than anybody. But she'll make it really clear. You get all the calcium you want from green leafy vegetables, from legumes. You're going to get plenty. Vitamin B12 is also an important issue, but very simple. B12 is needed for healthy nerves and healthy blood. And it's not made by animals or plants, it's made by bacteria. And some people speculate that the bacteria in the soil, on our fingers, on the plants that we might pull up from the earth, that might have traces of bacteria that could give us B12. Well, maybe, but I want to say that in today's world, even if you're working in the garden, that is a completely unreliable source. So the US government, by the way, meat eaters do get some B12 because the bacteria in a cow's gut make it and it absorbs into the meat. You have those same bacteria, your absorption is very, very low. So the US government says that everybody over the age of 50 should take a supplement of B12 because the B12 in supplements is better absorbed than the B12 in food. And a lot of people are deficient. I'm talking about meat eaters are deficient because they're taking acid-blocking drugs or they're taking metformin, so they're just not absorbing it well. I would go a step further. I think everybody should take a B12 supplement. It's in fortified soy milks and nutritional yeast and things like that, but to be on the safe side, it's in every multivitamin you ever took, from Flintstones to Centrum and every other one, and all the vegan ones, and you can get little pink pills at the store, and it'll give you the B12 you need. And the reason I emphasize this is I'm very nervous that a 16-year-old becoming vegan, as the years go by, they're not going to have a heart attack. They're going to be slim. They'll never get diabetes. They won't get cancer. But if they get low in B12, everybody's going to be afraid of them. So as long as we do that and are good role models for a healthy diet, we're going to be fine. Okay? So protein, not an issue. Calcium, real easy issue. B12, real easy. That's about it. All right. So a couple of things that people ask me about, I just want to address if you don't mind. What about soy? Do you hear people asking whether soy is safe or not? What they often ask about is, well, here's what happened. Years ago, researchers started teasing apart soy, and they discovered that there is something in soy products called isoflavones. That if you put their molecular structure on the chalkboard, it looks a lot like estrogen, female sex hormones. So they said, well, it's not exactly estrogen, but what if it acts like estrogen? And what if a boy eats it, he'll become effeminate? And what if a girl eats it, she'll get breast cancer? And what if a woman who has breast cancer eats it, she could die of a recurrence? And so you'll see paranoid websites that spell all this out. So researchers have put this to the test. And the first thing that has to be said is that boys or men who consume soy products do not become effeminate. And there's no hormonal changes that go in that direction whatsoever. And even if you look at semen production and sperm counts and everything, fertility, I mean, there is no lack of fertility in Asian countries where soy products have been consumed for generations. So bottom line, there's just no evidence of that at all. And then with regard to the more serious question about cancer, researchers have found that girls who have soy products regularly, particularly during adolescence while the breast tissue is forming, they have about 30% less risk of breast cancer as adults. Women who have previously had breast cancer, who add soy to their diet, in about 1 serving or 2 servings a day, a serving is like a cup of soy milk or half a cup of tofu, they have about 30% less risk of recurrence, about 30% less risk of mortality. So the point being that soy products seems to reduce the risk of cancer and reduce the risk of recurrence. Having said that, a vegan diet is not the soy promotion society. So it's totally optional. You don't have to have it. Yes, it's versatile. You can make meat out of it and yogurts out of it, and you can make cheese out of it. One day they'll make snow tires out of it. So it's really amazing what you can do with it. But it's totally optional, and some people go vegan from a Mediterranean pattern, pasta, vegetables. Others do it from a Latin American pattern, beans, rice, tortillas. And soy is part of an Asian tradition, perfectly fine, and you can use it or not as you see fit. The other question I get a lot is, what about fish? And what people will say is, fish, it has fat, but it's good fat, right? It's omega-3, and that's true. But when somebody says this to you, you have to have them sit down, because if they have salmon, Atlantic salmon is 40% fat, Chinook salmon is 50% fat, but most of that fat, more than 2/3 of it, about 70% actually, is not omega-3 at all. It's a mixture of saturated fat and various kinds of unsaturated fat that are unnecessary in the body. And so the problem with that is people tend to get heavy as a result of eating these fatty meals, because fish fat has how many calories per gram? 9, exactly. So they're eating this, and they tend to get heavy because they're in search of that little bit of omega-3. All right, so for people who are thinking, all right, sounds good to me, but how do I begin this kind of diet? I break it into 2 steps. So the first step is don't change your diet, just check out your possibility. And the first thing is, I take a piece of paper. All right, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, and for a week or 10 days, keep eating whatever you're eating, but start filling in things that you might like. So, okay, I can come up with a vegan breakfast. It might be cinnamon raisin oatmeal, blueberry pancakes, whatever, bran cereal with soy milk, almond milk, rice milk. You're just shopping, trying different things. And then same for lunch, same for dinner. Try different chili recipes or stews or whatever it might be. So we're filling out my list to try to find foods that would work for me with my schedule and so forth. And if you're out at an Italian place, they've got all kinds of choices, right? They'll make you a salad and minestrone or lentil soup. They'll top your pasta with mushrooms and tomatoes and all kinds of things. Or can you get a vegan meal at a Mexican restaurant? Sure. What can you have? Bean burritos, veggie fajitas, beans and rice. How about Chinese? Can you go vegan at a Chinese place? Sure. Once you know what you... Oh, by the way, fast food. A lot of people eat fast food. How about Subway? Yeah. What will they make you? They'll make you a veggie delight and the cheese. You put on tomatoes and the olives and the hot peppers and the spinach and the cucumbers. They'll dribble some red wine vinegar. They'll toast it for you. It comes out fine. Taco Bell, skip the meat taco, have the bean burrito, hold the cheese. Not the pinnacle of culinary art, but it's okay. So we're filling out our list. So once you know what you actually do like and what works for you, then do a test drive for 3 weeks. You're going to do all vegan all the time for 3 weeks. And during that time, two things will happen. The first is you're going to be skinny. You're going to lose weight. You're going to be healthy. Physical changes occur. The second thing is your tastes start to change. And you may not believe me, but how many of you ever switched from whole milk to skim milk? Let me see hands. Okay, when you did, what was the skim milk like at first?
Blue water.
Watery? Doesn't even look right. It's kind of blue, right?
Yeah.
How many of you got used to it? Okay, did you ever go back and taste whole milk again?
Yeah.
What was that like? It's
Like
too thick,
cream.
right? It's not like cream, like paint. Well, your whole life it was fine, but when you take it away, so your taste buds have a break of about 3 weeks, they actually ratchet down their fat expectation. They don't want it anymore. So if you go totally vegan, the first week it will seem light. You're going to think, do I have to acquire a taste for folk music now? Pastor, wear tie-dye. The second week, it starts to make sense. And the third week, you're totally comfortable with it. You found restaurants, you found products. You're really enjoying it. After 3 weeks, go back. Have a double bacon cheeseburger. And you're going to discover you are so passionate. You just don't want it anymore. And the last thing, this is something my mother taught me. Transition foods. Living in Fargo, my mom and my dad and their 5 kids were quite happily making our way through life. But after I got out of medical school, I was visiting my mother and I discovered she had a high cholesterol level. And I said, Mom, you can deal with that really easily. Just set aside the meats and so forth. Your cholesterol's going to come right down. My mom doesn't pay any attention to me. And whenever I would see her, I'd say, what are you doing? Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to change. And this started to bug me because I've written books. I'm funded by the National Institutes of Health. I've published scientific studies, and my own mother is not paying any attention. I finally realized why my mother was ignoring me. I'm my mother's third-born child. Are any of you third-borns in this audience? Okay. When you open up the family photo album, you see the tragic truth of it. And that is, there's a lot of pictures of number 1. And then there's some pictures of number 2. But by the time they got to you, they know what a dribbling toddler is like. To see you, you got to look in the index. So anyway, so I'm looking my mother in the eye and saying, you've got hypercholesterolemia. This is atherosclerosis. She thinks it's cute, I know a bit worse, but she's not really listening. She's paying no attention, really. So she went to see her physician. The doctor said, Mrs. Barnard, I'm going to write you a prescription. We're going to get this cholesterol down. She says, okay, but how long do I have to take this medicine for? He said, I don't think you get what I'm saying. You need a cholesterol-lowering drug to protect you from a heart attack, and you have to take it for the rest of your life. You have to take it every day. She said, what? What kind of medicine is this? I got to take this forever? So she goes home, and she picks up a book I wrote called Food for Life. Neal told me, if I make these recipes, my cholesterol level will have to fall. My mother does it. My mom starts a vegan diet. She does it for 7 weeks. She went back to the doctor. The doctor gets a blood sample, and he gets the slip from the lab. And he walks into the exam room and he sits down with my mother. And he looks at the slip. And he looks at my mother. He looks at the slip again and he says, there's something wrong with our laboratory. I need you to come back. Come back in a week and we'll get it all sorted out. She says, what's the problem? He says, this is like a 12-year-old's cholesterol level. There's something wrong with our reagents or something like that. We'll get it sorted out. We'll get you started on your medicines and we'll be fine. She says, wait a minute. If that is my cholesterol level, do I need medicine? He said, no, that's what I'm trying to explain to you. It's obviously a mistake. She says, thank you, I got it. Bye. She went home and she picked up the phone and she called me up. She said, Neal, why didn't you tell me about this? So anyhow, my mother got religion. She decided this vegan diet is great. It spares you from medicine. It keeps you healthy. So she wants the whole world to do it, starting with my father. So my dad grew up on a cattle ranch. And he is not about to do this veg-and lefty political diet. However, my dad was born in 1925. And all men born in that year have the same thing in common, which is they don't know where the kitchen is. My dad has never shopped for food, never prepared a meal, and never cleaned up in his life. He's been sitting at the same table, and when he's hungry, the food comes. And when he's finished, the plates go. And you stick around 3 or 4 more hours, it all starts again. So my mother takes full advantage of this. She And she gets a good bread. And she'll get romaine lettuce and Italian tomatoes that she slices up thin, and she gets some Dijon mustard, which in Fargo means something. Okay? And then she'll go to the store, and she'll get these fake meat things. It's just phony bologna, basically. It's ham or turkey or bologna, but it's not meat. It's made from soy or wheat gluten. And she gets a whole bunch of them, and she's found that my father doesn't really detect anything. She's giving it, she gives him hot dogs that are not dogs. And I now ended up with 2 vegetarian parents, and only one of them actually knows it. So the reason that I'm mentioning this is the fake meat products, you don't have to have them. But for somebody who's they just want a burger, go to the store, they got like 35 different veggie burgers. You're gonna find one that you really do like. They got all kinds of hot dogs and so forth. Or if it's like birthday time and all the neighbor kids are coming over, don't serve them lentil loaf. They're gonna beat your kid up. Yeah? What you should do instead is feed them hot dogs that are veggie dogs, and they'll think that's really cool. So anyway, those are the transition foods. Totally unnecessary, but they're there for the person who needs the yogurt, the milk, the meat substitutes. Okay? So we've got a lot of resources. Are some of you members of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine? Thank you very much for your support. We're working hard, as you know, on Capitol Hill and in the courtrooms, but we also have lots of resources. We've got lots of books, some of which are here in the exhibit hall. By the way, we work with our friends from Salad Master. Here, do you want to put your hand up? They have been helping us with some classes that we have around the country, and have really done a great job with that. And they make a nuclear-powered blender, which when you put stuff in, you got to stand back. Have any of you done our Kickstart program? It's really a cool thing. If you haven't done it, we're in the middle of one now. It's online. You go to PCRM.org, and every day you get an email from Alicia Silverstone or Bob Harper from The Biggest Loser or other people, and they're going to say, here is your little video to watch, here's the menus, here are some recipes, and the idea is we all go vegan for 3 weeks. There's a message board, people can talk to each other. We have one now that we started on Labor Day, and we're going through September 26th. Then our next one starts January 1st, or whatever the beginning of January is. And the idea, by the way, for some people it starts around the 2nd or 3rd. In November we're doing Kickstart India, and in March we're doing Kickstart China in Myanmar. And the reason we're doing that is China and India are the biggest countries there are, with more than 1 billion people each. They are westernizing aggressively. In China, meat intake went up 50% in the last decade. Wow. Diabetes is roaring in, and you can't reach every village in China and India, but people are online like never before. So our team is busily constructing these sites. We're really excited about them. If any of you want to work with us in publicizing this, we'd love to have your help. So the last thing that I just want to say is a look toward the future. If you look at where kids are going, childhood obesity used to be rare. Now, we don't know where we're going. Things are worse every single year. And part of this is because, frankly, around the world, food is more available than it ever has been. We have a government, we have industries that make sure that every time you turn on the television, half the commercials are for snack foods. And of course, the other half of the commercials are now for medications to undo the effects of snack foods. We've really got to change that. And to change that, that means several things. It means we've got to, in our own lives, change. Take a week, try out new foods, try through Kickstart. But then most importantly, we've got to spread the word. There are people who want to get healthy, but they're being misled. They're going in the wrong direction. There are industries that want you to go in the wrong direction. They're grabbing your ankles and hanging you upside down and shaking the change out of your pocket, and they don't care about your health. And unfortunately, the lobbies for the livestock industry, for the sugar industry and the junk food industry, those lobbies are well organized. They are very active every single day on Capitol Hill. But the truth is, there are more worried parents and more worried physicians and nurses and teachers than there are people who are profiting from the lobby. Our problem is that we're silent. We're not organized. When was the last time you ever called up your member of Congress to tell them what you want, him or her? We've got to change that by making noise, by getting together, getting organized, being strong. And at PCRM, what we do is we send out action alerts, letting you know, call this person. We'll make it real easy. You just click here. It's an automatic email. If we organize, if we are more organized than the opposition, we can turn this whole thing around. We can be healthier than we've ever been. The next generation can be the healthiest instead of the least healthy. They can have a totally different experience. They will get that if we work together. It's easy to do, and I'm convinced we can do it. Thanks very much.